April 12. 205 B.C. The shrine of the potent goddess Cybele received at Rome from Pessinus, and deposited in the Temple of Victory. Scipio Africanus and Crassus Dives, consuls. This was done in pursuance of an oracle in the Sibylline books, which affirmed that if a foreign enemy invaded Italy, they might be vanquished by introducing the goddess Cybele into the capital. 65. Lucius Annus Seneca, the Roman philosopher, destroyed himself by order of Nero. He was born in the first year of the Christian era, received a careful education, and became a disciple of the Stoic school of philosophy. He was the tutor of Nero, who, listening to the calumnies of his enemies, had him accused of treason and condemned. He professed a contempt for luxuries, but was not indifferent to wealth, for he acquired an immense estate. His morals have often been republished in English. 276. Marcus Claudius Tacitus, Emperor of Rome, died at Tyana upon Sauris. He claimed descent from Tacitus the historian, was a wise, benevolent and patriotic ruler, and had reigned but 6 months when he was snatched away by assassination or some violent disease. 1204. Siege of Constantinople by the French and Venetian Crusaders. In the pillage which followed the conquest of this superb city, all the admirable monuments of Grecian art were demolished, including the colossal Hercules, by Lysippus. This deed by Christians is a great offset to the wanton depredations upon works of art, of which the Turks and pagans are so often accused. 1443. Henry Chicheley, Archbishop of Canterbury, died. His talents fitted him for the office, and the office enabled him to exercise his benevolence and charity with munificence. He founded the College of All Souls. 1520. Francis Alvares, a Portuguese priest, arrived at the court of David, king of Abyssinia, where he remained 6 years, and on his return published an account of his embassy. 1549. Joan of Kent, an Anabaptist, condemned to be burned. 1646. Francis de Bassompierre, Marshal of France, died. He was one of the most distinguished and the most amiable men of the court of Henry IV. Incurring the displeasure or the jealousy of Cardinal Richelieu, he was sent to the Bastille, where he remained 12 years, until the death of the cardinal. He wrote his own memoirs and a history of his embassies, while in prison. 1655. Francis Guyite, an eminent French critic, died. He employed many years in traveling and study, and finally settled in Paris, where he became so much esteemed that he might have risen to the highest honors, had he not preferred retirement. 1678. Thomas Stanley, a learned English writer, died, aged 34. He published a history of philosophy, containing the lives and opinions of philosophers, of every sect, a work of great merit and popularity, and which was translated into Latin for the use of the German literati. 1695. Votes of the Assembly of New York first published. 1695. John Kittlewell, an English divine, died. He acquired great reputation previous to the Revolution, but refusing to take the oath of allegiance after that event, was deprived of his living, and devoted his time to writing. 1704. James Benignus Bossuet, Bishop of Meaux, in France, died. He distinguished himself as a preacher and a writer of great erudition. His works were published in 12 volumes. Quarto. 1709. First number of the Tatler appeared. 1734. Thomas Fautat de Lagny died at Paris. His mathematical efforts and researches were directed more to subjects of curiosity than utility. He carried the quadrature of the circle to 120 decimal places. 1743. George Cheyne, a Scottish physician, died. He was studious and abstemious in his youth, but on coming to London, cultivated the Society of Free Livers for the advantages of trade, till he became at length extremely asthmatic, lethargic, listless, and corpulent, exceeding 32 stone in weight. Unavailing, he returned to a milk and vegetable diet, and recovered his strength, activity and cheerfulness, with the free and perfect use of his faculties. And, by regular observance of this regimen, reached the mature age of 72. His writings are numerous, and principally on health and longevity. 1749. British ships Namur, 74 guns, 700 men. Pembroke, 60 guns, 400 men. Apollo, 40 guns, 300 men. And a great many merchantmen, lost on the coast of Coromandel. 23 men only saved from the Namur. 1749. Francis Bellinger, a learned doctor of the Sorbonne, died at Paris. He translated some of the ancient historians, and wrote criticisms on Rollin's works to show his ignorance of Greek. 1757. Subsidiary treaty between England and Prussia. England to pay annually 4 million crowns to Frederick II. 1765. Edward Young, the English poet, died, aged 84. He was educated for the church, but was unfortunately induced to abandon it for politics, in which he was unsuccessful. His night thoughts had their origin in a melancholy state of mind, produced by his misfortunes. 1770. George III gave his assent to the act for repealing the duties on glass, paper and colors, in America. But the duty was continued from a point of honor, and as a badge of sovereignty over the colonies. 1780. The British opened their fire upon the American batteries at Charleston, which they continued until the 20th. 1782. Pietro Metastasio, an Italian poet, died. He supplied the opera for a number of years with popular operas and oratorios. He has been styled the poet of love. In all his works he stands high. In his operas he is unrivaled. 1782. The French fleet under Count de Grasse defeated by the British under Rodney, with the loss of 9,000 killed and wounded. A French 74-gun ship was blown up, and one of the same rate sunk. 2 74s, 164, and the Ville de Paris, of 110 guns, having on board the French admiral, were taken. 36 chests of money. The whole train of artillery, battering cannon, and traveling carriages, were on board the captured vessels, a circumstance which totally disabled the French from carrying on offensive operations against the British possessions in the West Indies. British loss 1,050 killed and wounded. A new system of tactics for breaking through the line of an enemy was here made use of for the first time. It was invented by John Clerk, of Eldon, a country gentleman, unacquainted with navigation. His principles have since been applied by all the English admirals, and Howe, St. Vincent, Duncan and Nelson, owed to them their most signal victories. 1782. Action off Ceylon, between the French under Admiral Suffren, and the British under Hughes. British loss, 144 killed and 400 wounded. 1784. Joseph Rowlin, an eminent French physician, died. He was induced by Montesquieu to remove to Paris, where he acquired great reputation, and was employed by government to write medical works. 1788. The first power loom began to work at Philadelphia, and on the 1st of November following the quantity of cloths manufactured was 3,719 yards jean, 580 corduroys, 67 Federal rib, 57 beaver fustian, 3,672 plain cottons, 123 bird's eye, and 2,879 linen. 1800. Frederick Conrad Bornemann, a celebrated German teacher, who had undertaken a journey into Africa for discovery, wrote that he was on the point of setting out with the great caravan of Borneo, since which nothing certain has been learned of him. 1804. Joseph Dacre Carlyle, an English Orientalist, died. He devoted much attention to the study of Arabic, traveled in the East, and on his return was employed in the publication of the Bible in Arabic, when his constitution gave way under the task imposed upon it. 1809. The French fleet in Basque Roads destroyed by the British under Admiral Cochrane. The British lost but 10 killed and about 40 wounded. The loss of the French in vessels and men was tremendous. 1810. The French captured the East India Company's settlement at Tapanuli, in Sumatra. 1814. Count d'Ardois, brother of Louis XVI, entered Paris. Bonaparte set off for the island of Elba. Intercourse between France and England opened, and a grand illumination in London, on account of the restoration of the Bourbons, and peace with France, which was continued 3 days. 1814. Charles Burney, an English musical composer, died. He commenced the study of music as an organist. At the age of 31 he undertook to write a general history of music, upon which he bestowed nearly 40 years of labor and travel. He visited all the institutions of Europe at which he could obtain important information for his work. He furnished the musical articles for each encyclopedia, and is the author of several other valuable works. 1815. Great eruption of Tomboro, which commenced on the 5th. The explosions resembled the firing of cannon, and were heard at Sumatra, not nearer than 900 miles. Such were the tremendous effects of the burning lava, the overflowing of the sea, the falling of houses, and the violence of the whirlwind, that out of 12,000 inhabitants on this island, only 26 survived. At Java, 300 miles distant, the air was so full of ashes, as to produce profound darkness at midday. And at Bima, 40 miles distant, the roofs of many houses were crushed by the weight of ashes falling on them. 1816. Hamilton County in northern New York erected. 1829. Felix Neff, a Swiss preacher, died. He undertook to improve the education and domestic habits of the peasants of the dreary regions called the High Alps of France. He persevered a number of years with much success, but his unremitting labors destroyed his constitution, and led to a premature death. 1834. N. G. Dufay-Ife, a French linguist, died. His mother was distinguished for her heroism in the Vendée War, and the son was driven to America by political disturbances, and resided at Philadelphia. He just survived the publication of his great work, The Pronouncing Dictionary. 1839. John Galt, the novelist, died at Greenock, Scotland, aged 60. Being unsuccessful in business in London, he visited the south of Europe in 1809, and soon after commenced an active literary career, which continued till near the close of his life. 1839. The justly celebrated Drive Black, of Mareschal College, Aberdeen, Drive Keith, so well known as a writer on prophecy, with the devoted Messrs. Bonar of the Scottish Church, sailed from Dover in England to inquire into and devise measures for the amelioration of the state of the Jews in Palestine. Mission proved of much benefit. 1840. Francis Anthony, Chevalier de Gerstner, a distinguished Austrian engineer, died at Philadelphia, aged 44. On the continent of Europe, from Budweis on the Moldau to Linz on the Danube, 130 miles, he suggested to the Emperor Nicholas the project of a railroad from St. Petersburg to Moscow, a portion of which was undertaken under his direction, and first opened in 1837, and since prosecuted by the government. 1848. New Code of New York laws adopted. 1849. Signer Gasparis, at Naples, discovered a new planet, making the fourth added to our system in 4 years. 1850. Adoniram Judson, a celebrated Baptist missionary, died at sea. 1854. A review of 25,000 troops in Paris, before the British officers. 1854. The French squadron under Admiral Parsifal Deschines sailed from Brest to join the British fleet in the Baltic. 1855. The United States gave the 12 months' notice to Denmark of their intention to terminate the Treaty of 1826, by which the payment of sound dues was recognized.